This time I'm going to look at a Sony CDP CX225. This is a 200 disc CD changer with a ghost in the machine. A CD player from hell. This one here, just out of the blue, stops. For no reason, it just stops. Let's see what's wrong with it. Today I have a CDP CX225 to look at. I got this one given to me, told it does not work. I already have a unit just like this and a 240, but got the remote with it as well. And the instruction manual, I'm told that it doesn't play properly, so before I even try operating, I'm going to pull the top off of it so we can observe what's going on and see if we can figure out why it's not playing. Now, I've been told it plays for a bit and then acts up, so I'll be putting a disc in and letting it play, and we'll see how long it plays before it stops. So I'm going to load my two Music Bakery discs in, and the label goes in facing to the right. It's a mistake some people make with these things, is that they put them in with the disc facing the wrong way, and then when it loads, of course, it doesn't read. So we'll observe how the mechanism operates as I load up the discs. This one looks to be quite an early model, because later models actually had a disc protector to stop discs from falling out if it was moved while there was a disc in place. Anyway, turn it on, and what it'll do is it's going to rotate around and look for discs, which is probably not going to find because there's so much light in here. Maybe it will find them. Okay, and let's play. I'm going to let this play, and we'll see how long this plays. Apparently it starts acting up once it's playing for a while, so it could be a mechanical problem in the traverse, like cracked gears and stuff. But I'm going to let it play and see how long it goes, and then we'll get into this and see what the problem is once I've determined why it's stopping or skipping or whatever it's doing. Of course, my attention is going to be focused on the traverse gears. Not so much this one, but the one on the motor, which is in behind here, which we can't see because there's a cover over it. But that gear has been known to split, and when it cracks, what happens is the motor gets to the point where the teeth are split and it can't easily turn. So what happens is the laser stops moving, the servo starts calling for more power to move the motor because the motor's not moving. And then once the resistance builds up, or once it overtakes the resistance caused by the cracked gear, it will shoot forward, and we'll see this actually jump, and it will usually skip. So basically what I do is I watch this just to see how it's turning. Normally it turns in very slow increments, but see, that time it seemed to move quite a bit. But we just watch this because that's usually what we'll see it. We'll see it appear if it's caused by a motor problem. And that's usually what goes wrong with these. This one uses a KSS213B, and they have not had a lot of problems with these pickups. Plus the fact that the pickup is vertically mounted as opposed to horizontal, so we don't have a problem with dust collecting on the lens. So generally, when these units had a problem with the laser, it was usually caused by contamination from cigarette or other types of smoke in the environment. So if one of these units was used in a smoker's home, you could get contamination on the lens because it's airborne. But dust is not typically an issue on units like this. I've always been tempted to stick a camera in one of these units just to send video of the mechanism operating, because I think it's just a work of art the way these things operate. We could be looking at a bent spindle motor or disc clamp assembly. You'll notice that the disc itself has a fair bit of wobble to it. And I'm watching the little lens. I don't know if I can get a shot of the lens. I might be able to get a shot of the lens if I can get the camera in the right angle. I can certainly see it here. I'll try to get a shot of the lens. Maybe you guys can see it. Oh, you can see it there. See the coil in the lens moving back and forth? Try to get the light in here just right. But there, you can see you can actually see the lens, the coil on the lens, right in here, as it's tracking. So that's having to move back and forth as it tracks that wobble on the disc. If the wobble on the disc becomes too great, it'll lose focus. And then if that happens, it's generally either the plastic disc clamp or the spindle motor itself. Usually it's the plastic clamp. But it could be just a warped disc too. Every CD has a slight amount of wobble to it. None of them are perfect. This is the same type of optical block as in this one. This one's of course got the part of the bracket on here. The one that's in the changer doesn't have this bracket. It pops off like that. So this is the block that's on this one. I don't know if this one works or not, but that's the Traverse CX213, complete with the little short circuit on the back here to prevent the laser from getting popped because it's out of the circuit. But this is the same Traverse. It should be the same. I think it's the same spindle as well. And sometimes what happens is you get some wear on here, or the spindle starts to move and the clamp doesn't clamp properly, or it could be the clamp itself. The clamp is typically magnetic. It's attracted to here. So sometimes you get a bit of a wobble on this here. This metal either starts to come loose or it gets a bit of a bend to it. Anyway, that sometimes happens on these units. The gear that I'm concerned that cracks on these ones is the one on the motor. If I pop this gear out and take off this cover, I want to see if this gear's cracked, just in case I need it. This is the gear here that's known to crack. This one looks like it's starting to crack already on this one. But what happens on a lot of these is you get a bit of a crack. Maybe this one's okay. Oh, there you can see. If we look right here, so when this gear cracks, the teeth start to separate a bit and it causes resistance as it's trying to move the secondary gear. Also, what sometimes happens, you get a little bit of dirt that gets into the gears. That's why they cover them up now. The earlier ones, they didn't cover them up, but you get a grain of sand in the teeth that would cause the gear to stick. It was always on this primary gear too. It didn't really happen so much on the secondary gear or the Traverse, just because the torque is much higher by the time you get to the secondary gear and the Traverse. The torque is much higher. But if you get a grain of sand in one of these teeth, or you get a crack, it causes the teeth to separate, which hasn't happened on this one yet. It'll cause it to stick, and then the motor, of course, the current comes up, keeps going higher and higher and higher to get it to spin, and then all of a sudden, when it takes off, and you get the pickup jumping forward. Normally this is held in place like this. So as it's trying to move, instead of moving nice and smooth like this, it'll jump forward like that, because the motor will bind. That's a very common problem on these. That's what I'm watching for on this. I haven't seen it do it yet. The disc wobble is something that I'm keeping an eye on as well. As you can see, as the pickup moves further out from the center of the disc as it's playing, of course the wobble becomes larger because of the outside circumference of the disc. And all it takes it to do is exceed the travel on the actual optical pickup. And if it ends up exceeding the travel that the pickup can move, we'll end up with a defocused section, which will of course cause errors. This is the piece that I'm watching right now. I'm keeping an eye on this because this is where I think my problem is going to be on this particular player. I'll try another disc too to see if it wobbles the same, because it could be the disc. As I was mentioning before, all CDs will have a certain amount of play because they're not stamped perfectly. Well, I've got the disc, or I've got the CD player playing the last track. There is a good representation of the laser at work. That focus is doing a good job. But it hasn't skipped while it's been playing this disc. It's played it through beginning to end. I'll change to the next disc and we'll watch the next disc pick up and play. We'll watch it from this angle here. And then I'll pull this mechanism apart and just take a look at that gear, because that's likely where our fault is a cracked gear, although it hasn't done it yet. So this one may end up having to be on test for a long period of time in order to resolve the fault. Well, let me just change the disc. So I'll push the disc skip button on the remote. Yeah, I think that the wobble on that disc was probably a warp on that disc itself, because this one certainly is not anything like the other one. I'll skip forward on the tracks here. This is a 80-minute 700 meg disc, so there's like 20 tracks on this disc. This is the last track that's playing on this one now. I think this is track 20. But as you can see, the warpage on this disc is much less than the other one was. There's always going to be a little bit, right? No disc is perfect. But so far so good. Well, now I'm starting to think clamp, because I'm back to that original disc and much less wobble on the disc. See? Very little. So it's got to be a clamp problem. So let's just stop this unit and check out the clamp. Just observing it chucked the disc a few times. Okay, I'm just going to open the unit up and we can inspect the clamp itself and see if there's any debris on the clamp. So to actually get the unit to not load a disc, because even when it's not playing it will load a disc. I'm just going to hit the open button on the front here. Gotta find it. Should be over there. There we go. And that will force the unit to unload the disc and not load anything, so that I can check out the disc clamp over here. So I'm going to take the clamp out just so I can examine it. So we'll use a Phillips screwdriver and remove the clamp bracket. I think that's likely where our fault is on this one, is it's not clamping properly. And then the clamp will pull out. It's got a spring on it as well back here. I just want to kind of lift this clamp out of the way right now. I mean, the clamp itself looks fine. It's magnetic, so there's a magnet here, which is what attracts it to the actual spindle. Lift this out of the way again here momentarily, and I mean, it just slips into the end of this clamp. There's nothing that really holds it in place. When it drops in over top, and it's attracted to the actual spindle motor itself, so it may not have just clamped the disc properly. I mean, it's held in place by magnetism, so it's not like there's anything really physically that holds it in place. When it's clamped, the retainer here is not actually making contact with this. It sits in the middle, and when you unload a disc, it pulls it physically away, which is odd, because there's nothing really that appears to be wrong with the unit itself. It's going to look for any dirt on the actual bladder or spindle assembly. And these ones were actually quite heavy duty compared to what you found in most basic CD players. See if I can get a better shot of it here. But it's all metal on this one. As you can see, everything looks clean in here. There's nothing looks dirty. I don't see any debris or anything. That was the strength of this particular design with the vertically loaded discs, is that they didn't attract dust and dirt. These were actually well-designed units, and the one that I've got I've had for years. It has tens of thousands of hours of play. I mean, I use that changer on a regular basis. I use both of them. I've got two of them now, but I only had one for the longest time, and I run that thing, probably 20 hours a week, sometimes more, 30 hours a week. On my days off, when I'm actually not here working in the shop, I've usually got CDs playing in the house, and I just leave it run all day long. I don't really have too many issues with it, other than the odd CDR that's developed some issues, as some of the cheap discs had a tendency to fade. But my pressed discs I've never had any issues with. So I'm going to put this piece back in. It just slips together like this, like that, and then this fits over. There's a post here that fits over. It's held in place. There's a lever in here behind here that rides on a cam, on a little. It's a little arm up here that operates it. And then this piece goes back in to this side to hold the pivot in place. It only goes in one way. It's keyed, so there's not really any adjustments. There's adjustments up here that can adjust the position of it, and that's about it.
Okay, there's the fault. That's
yeah.
what it's doing. Now we got to figure out why is it doing it.
The only other thing I can think of offhand is it could be this gear, the one on the motor. Although it hasn't shown any indication that it's bad. I guess all I can do is inspect it. That disc is nice and straight now. Could have been the clamp. That just stopped.
Well, now we know what the symptom is. What the heck is causing this? It just randomly stops on its own. Weird problem.
Okay, maybe that's the fault it's got. I didn't touch anything. Maybe that's the fault. I'm not going to touch anything. I'm going to see if it does it again. These units have a mode switch in them. Little blue switch down here that sometimes does weird things. And I'm thinking, just from what I just saw it do, that that's probably part of our problem. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. Let me see if I can get the camera in a bit better angle. It's a little switch that's activated by the mechanism. It's down in here. Let's see if I can get this thing positioned a little better. Some light in the spot. There, little blue switch down in the bottom there. So what sometimes happens on these, let's just see if I can make this thing fault. Start it playing. We'll change disc. Sometimes that little switch will give an erroneous signal and it'll do weird things. I'm thinking possibly that little switch is what's causing my problem. What it does is it signals the microcontroller when the disk is fully loaded. And sometimes the switch gets dirty, and it will actually cause it to load and unload a few times. If I flick this thing a bit, it might do something. I just witnessed off camera, of course, it loaded and then unloaded and spun around and then loaded again. See if I can make it do it again on camera. What that switch's job is to do is to tell the microcontroller that the disk is chucked. And if it gets dirty, it sometimes won't fully chuck the disk. I'm thinking maybe that's why my disk was doing this, because it wasn't fully clamped. That's what I'm starting to think is the problem on this one. Of course, operating it back and forth like this is going to actually start to clean the switch up. Okay, I'm just going to see if I can get my neutral can in there. Make sure there's some spray in the nozzle, because my can's getting pretty empty. See if I can, I don't know if my head will be in the way or not, but see if I can get this can down here and into position so that I can give it a blast of cleaner into the switch. Activate this a few times and it should clear the switch up. Ideally what I want to do is I want to have the switch in the neutral position so that I can manually flip it back and forth. Try to clear off any oxidation in the switch, let the solvents work their way in, and clean it as best I can. We used to change these switches on these units. I've never encountered one that was screwed in as tight as that, and they're always a pain in the ass to get to change them. But it is a known issue that causes random problems on these type of units. So now I'm just going to let it play. Put it on random play. So it will be, oh, see, that disc is really wobbling now, like it didn't clamp very well at all. Like it's loose. I think that's the problem, that switch is still acting up. But working it through its paces a few times should help clear things up a bit. Here's something else to check. This is the light emitting diode that shines the light into the mechanism. Check this pin out here in the middle. This one right here. That might be the problem right there. Loss of signal to the disc detector. I don't want to touch the alignment on this because it is critical. You never want to touch the alignment on this unless you actually have to start replacing parts, because you have to get the alignment exact, otherwise it won't pick the disc up properly. Yeah, I'm gonna let this thing play. Resolder the connection on here that was obviously bad, because you could see it wiggling when I moved it right here on the front here. So I redid the plug and redid the actual LED. I'm gonna let this thing play, and we'll see if it's still gonna act up. It's a weird one, a weird problem, where it would start to play and then it would just stop. There's a better shot of that switch. I still suspected that was the switch that was causing the problem. I put more cleaner into it. Change discs here. I'll change tracks. Alright, so this thing still has a problem, and I just figured out what it is. I just figured out what this one is. It's the door open switch. As I was watching it, as it was playing, all of a sudden, open appeared. Just like that. Of course, when the drawer is opened, it has to search out all the discs. Let's see if I can get it to do it on camera. Guaranteed, it's going to be the open switch that detects when the drawer is open. There's a switch in here. This is exactly what it did. It'll do this. I'll leave the camera running and see if we can actually catch. It's going to be this open switch. Guaranteed, it's the open switch. It did it without me touching it. That's what the first couple times it did it was weird because it was, you know, when I moved the player, for example. Yeah, it said open on the screen. When it did it. This is sound effect displaying. I can get away with that. But I bet it's one of those same type of switches. Okay, the detection switch for the door is right here. You can access it without taking the unit apart. Just take out a couple screws that hold the switch in place. A number 0 screwdriver will fit this. Switch is mounted on a little circuit board, and there are plugs on here. I'm just going to inspect these connections, but this is the switch here, and it's one of these type of switches that gives us lots of trouble. We've seen these type of switches on other devices, and these little switches cause all kinds of headaches. How do those connections look on that? So say this unit's been intermittent. I've been running it for hours, and all of a sudden it just happened to do it when I was looking at it, and I saw the word open show up on the screen. It's like, ah, damn. Intermittent problems really can be a pain in the ass to find. And sometimes you just get lucky because you're just happen to be looking at them when they do it. Whether you're looking at your, I'm just going to resolder this, whether you're looking at your scope or your meter. Some of the meters are getting better because they have a max min, right? So you can set them up so that if a voltage is changing, you can catch it. But in this case, it just happened to show up when I was just happened to be looking at the screen when it did it on the display, when it acted up. And then it became pretty obvious. See, I was thinking, okay, if you get intermittent connections on the switch on the back, which is the mode switch for whether the unit is loaded or unloaded, well, those cause weird problems too. So checking to see the connections on the board here, see that they're okay. Okay, we're going to give this switch a shot of cleaner. Can't really unplug it to get it out of the way, so I'm just going to bring it up top here just so I don't get cleaner all over the inside of the unit. We'll give this a shot of cleaner and see if we can get this switch to clean up. Get some cleaner in there, that should fix it. Get oil all over my fingers in the process. Clean that switch good. We'll put it back in place. Try not to get oil all over the inside of this thing. Switch just sits in place like that, held in place with 2 screws. I'll load this thing up with CDs and we'll test it some more. Also, probably not a bad idea to do a factory reset. To do a factory reset on one of these, you hold down the stop button and hit the power, and the power light will blink as it goes through a full reset, and you'll have the play and the pause buttons, the lights flashing. Release the stop button. It will continue this sequence as the disc carousel spins. This will erase any disk memory and so forth if there's any disks that have been programmed. Not so applicable with this one because it doesn't have custom file, but the ones that have custom file that remember what CDs you put in them, it will certainly clear the memory out on them, and they'll say all erase. Okay, it's time to load some disks. Keep label facing right, as they say. Turn it on. I'm just kind of putting these in at random. Close. Play. Okay. Put it on shuffle. And I'm going to let this thing play. And we'll see whether it acts up. Good. Okay, I guess time will tell whether I've got it. I'm a lot more confident now than I was before because I saw it do it. But we'll monitor it and I'll keep you guys posted. Another sound effects disc. Well, this unit is still working. Turn that down. It's been going here for a while. Haven't had any shutdown for the last, I don't know, hour or so. I think at this point, I think I can call this one done. Of course, I thought that before, and then it started acting up again. But I've been monitoring this now for a while, watching it, and everything is appearing to be working as it should. I'm going to change discs. As I say, this one was a strange one. I knew from the symptom that it had to be something mechanical. And say initially I thought maybe the switch at the back. And the switch at the back probably was dirty because the first couple times I loaded this thing, there was a fair bit of disc wobble, which would indicate that the clamp wasn't possibly fully engaged. Or it didn't clamp tight when it loaded the disc. Certainly the switch at the back there has certainly over the years caused a lot of issues on these, so you always got to check that one. So we had a switch at the back, we cleaned that up. I resoldered the sensor here. You could definitely see the bad connections on it, but ultimately the intermittent problems I think was all this switch on the front here for the door open. It would just be playing and then the switch contact would go bad and the microcontroller would think that someone opened it, and when that happens, of course, it stops playing and it goes to eject the disk. Normally what happens when you open it, if I'm on disk 24 now, if I open it up, it should just hold the disk like that, right? Like eject the disk or back into the tray, waiting for me to do something. And what was happening was, and then of course when you close it, it will do the search to see if you have removed any disks, etc. What was happening, the symptom that was happening, I just hit the play button, so it's going to do a random search here. Now because I had it open, it's going to search all the disks to see whether I've made any changes. So it knows how many disks, it's now counted how many disks are in it. And this is what was happening if I kind of open this door ever so slightly when it's playing. So what was happening was, if I were to do that, it will drop the disc back, and then it would load the same disc and not play. Spin up, read the table of contents, and then sit there. That was the symptom that I was getting intermittent. And until I saw it say open on the screen, just momentarily, like literally, this is what, I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Can you see it? But it just went like that, like open. That's all it showed up, with just a little flash while it was playing, just a little open, and it only stayed up for like that long. It was like somebody just doing that on it. Anyway, as I say, I'm going to put this together now. I don't think I even need to leave it apart at this point. I'm going to throw it together, and I'm going to leave it play and monitor it. But I'm pretty darn confident that I found the problem with this one. So if you've got an issue like that where these machines are just random phantom problems. They just appear to be doing weird things. Check the door switch. Check the switch at the back. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.